is 1973. Hopkinsville is laying the foundation. You guys have already seen the 1972 heavyweight state champion, George Turan. You've seen the 1970 98-pound state champion from Hoptown, Bill Clarkson. We have another 1970s era state champion. We'll let him tell you all about it. Sir, if you would, introduce yourself.
My name's Kent Parrent, and I was a state champion in 1973 at Hopkinsville High School. We had coaches there that were Fleming Thornton and Walt Hawkins, and this was kind of a sport that was started as a conditioning for football.
I can believe that.
We did have a couple of other wrestlers that weren't really football players, they were wrestlers. That was Mike Givens and Eddie Wade,
okay,
who were 2- and 3-time state champions.
All right, and it was 155 pounds, correct?
Correct, 155 pounds.
So, doing some research for some other videos, I found that Hopkinsville was one of like the first 10 high schools represented in the first state tournament in 1964. So in Hopkinsville, had wrestling kind of always just been at the school? Did you guys know about wrestling? I mean, because not a lot of history exists on that. So kind of walk us through, like, did you know about the wrestling program? Was it just required for all football players to just come out to the wrestling room after season ended? How'd that go?
Well, for me, it didn't start with conditioning for football. For me, I had heard about the state champion wrestlers we had, which was Mike Givens and Eddie Wade. And I remember calling Fleming Thornton, who was the football coach, on the phone when I was in the 6th grade, and told him that I wanted to wrestle. Okay. He said, well, come on out there. So I came out in the 6th grade, and then in the 7th grade, I actually qualified to the state tournament, best I remember. And that was the year that Eddie Wade and Mike Givens also won the state tournament. And then it just went on from there. From the 67 to 73, I was involved at the high school level, and then I wrestled at Southeast Missouri in college, and then I helped coach at the University of Kentucky back in 79, 80.
And we'll talk about the University of Kentucky because I want to spend a little bit of time there on that. But let's go over your 1973 bracket, 155 pounds. In the first round, it says you wrestled Jeff Frank from Louisville Ballard, and it's got you winning a 2-1 decision. You remember anything about that match?
I do remember that match.
Well, tell us all about it.
In fact, that was should have probably been the finals.
Oh, wow.
If you'll notice, Jeff Franks was probably a #1 ranked. He was undefeated also.
Yeah, the bracket here doesn't have like rankings; it just has like pairing. So
okay, well he was the ` from another region, and he did not know that I had gotten beat in the regional finals. Got beat by Art Shimwell from Fort Campbell.
Okay.
So when I get up to the state tournament, Jeff Franks thinks he is going to be wrestling Art Shimwell, and I walk out on the mat and I beat him 2-1.
And see, that's something too about this era is you didn't have Facebook, you didn't have the internet. You couldn't look and see who was who. It was, I guess, just showed up and there it was, right? You just whoever was in front of you, so you had to wrestle. There was no pre-planning, no game planning. You couldn't scheme. We know this guy in the second round usually, like Woodford County. We know that they're pretty good with like upper body attacks, lower body attacks. We're going to try to do this. It's just whoever was there, you had to wrestle, right?
And you didn't have videos,
Oh, true.
Videotape.
I can believe that. Then the second round, it's got you wrestling Arnie Guy from Woodford County, and it says you win that by a 4-1 decision. Remember anything about that?
I remember Arnie Guy, but as far as that match goes, after I beat Jeff Franks, I went on and started thinking that I could win this thing.
Right.
Even though the year before I was a runner-up, I wanted to try to go out winning first.
Then in the semifinals, you're wrestling Ted Lineberry from Louisville Doss, and it's got you winning a 6-0 decision on that. Do you remember any recollection of that?
No, the only thing I remember is once I get to the state finals, I think I won that one by more than any of them.
And then, of course, in the state finals, you're wrestling Don Schmidt from Newport Central Catholic. Do you remember the score of that? I'll tell you, Can you remember it?
It seemed like I beat him pretty good.
You beat him 6-1 in the finals, 6-1, and that was your 1973 state championship bracket. Now you said you placed. You remember what you placed in like 72, 71?
Oh yeah, yeah. And 72 I placed second.
Okay.
And I got beat in the state finals by a guy from Christian County.
Okay.
His name was Frank McWilliams. And I can remember this in 71, 72. So in 71, they started the program at Christian County. Jim Parrent started the wrestling program.
Right.
And I can remember Coach Thornton wanted us to go over to Christian County and help show them some things, even though Jim Parrent did wrestle some in high school.
Right.
And so we went over there, and I wrestled some with Frank then, and I beat Frank about every time I beat him. Wrestled him, and
Right.
And then in the state finals, I was winning by I think 5 or 6 points, and just a matter of seconds on the clock, and I got put on my back and pinned
Oh, my.
that quick, and that was my junior year.
That's the way we were down here last time. We're at the Carnegie Library here in Hoptown in 1987. John Poindexter wrestled a guy he said he'd beat 11 times from Fort Campbell. So in case you don't know, Christian County, Hopkinsville, Fort Campbell, all in the same county. All you guys have great wrestling programs, all great traditions. And John said he beat him 11 times, gets to the state finals as a senior, and gets beat by a guy that he had beat 11 times.
I remember John and David Poindexter well.
Yep.
And Fort Campbell was I was coaching at Fort Campbell at that time
Okay.
when John got
Oh my,
ready.
yep.
So I coached at I wrestled at Hoptown. I coached at Fort Campbell for about 9 or 10 years, and then I coached at County for about 5 or 6 years.
And earlier you said that you went on to University of Kentucky as a graduate assistant.
I did. I went
Now,
to.
you have something really cool here. Now, this is awesome. This is the University of Kentucky Wrestling Wildcats 1979-1980 program. I'm going to insert some photos in here. But a guy that you all have already seen a bunch is listed as an assistant coach, and I'm going to send this to him. Joe Carr. You guys have seen Coach Carr, legendary Woodford County coach. That's his brother Fletcher, correct?
That's correct.
Fletcher Carr is the head coach. And, this is incredible. Cliff Hagan is the athletic director. Singletary, the Singletary Center for the Arts, is the president. But you're listed as a graduate assistant.
That's correct.
And
you also had Randy Miller, who was assistant coach. He had coached at Woodford County. And then once he left Woodford County and came over to help at UK, Rusty Parks took over at Woodford County.
Right.
And then we had the Booster Club people was Anita Madden.
Yep.
Anita and Preston Madden were the ones that really helped out with the support of the team financially.
Let's read your biography here. A new addition to the wrestling staff, Kent graduated from Hopkinsville High School in 1973, where he finished first in the state at 155 pounds. Following high school, Kent wrestled at Southeast Missouri State University for 2 years before transferring to University of Kentucky in 1975, where he earned his degree in education. So we've kind of got your wrestling story up to college. What did life do for you after college? Like you said you coached. What else did you do in life after college? Because I know a lot of people are going to remember your name, remember seeing you. What have you done since then?
Well, that's all I really wanted to do was coach.
Okay.
And then after I coached about, 20 years, I decided to be a high school administrator. So I ended up being the assistant principal at Christian County.
Okay.
For about 15 years.
Oh my.
And then I ended up being the principal at a middle school at North Drive, which they dropped it and turned it into an elementary school.
Okay. Now, earlier I think you were saying that you were instrumental in getting Hopkinsville's legendary coach to come. Is that correct?
That's correct. When I went to school out in Cape Girardeau, Missouri, at Southeast Missouri, I went out there with another guy who was about 4 or 5 years older than me that graduated about the same time Mike and Eddie did, maybe a year later. His name was Bruce Thomas, and we ran into a middle school coach that would come to Cape Central to help practice some, and his name was Jim Placer, and we told him about the job that was going to come open in Hopkinsville, and when Jim comes over and he has Tony Harris that wins the state championship for him his first year, and that's when it all started, was you know, Hopkinsville being up in the state first and second pretty much every year. And at Christian County had Jim Parrent, who was also very competitive at that time. So you know, me going in after Jim Parrent and trying to keep that program, which it still is very vital in the community as far as winning and competitiveness, just as always.
And of course, in case you don't know, we'll go over it real quick. Hopkinsville won 3 team state titles, 1985, 1986, 1992. Christian County won 1 team state title in 1988.
That's correct.
And numerous individual state champions, as you guys have seen a lot of them on the channel. Names from Hopkinsville that you guys have already seen, you know, your Livingston Merritts. You're going to be seeing Miguel Merritt. You had DeMarco Shelley, Hank Penner. Christian County had, you know, Damian Level, a couple of Chris Perry that we've met with, a couple other guys, A.J. Harvey from Christian County. I think Christian County has had a state champion for the last 4 or 5 years in a row. They had Jacarion Merritt in 19. They had Nico Bussell in 20. They had J.T. Adams in 21. And then they had A.J. Harvey in 22. So they've had last 4 years they've had a state champion. So Christian County program, and you know, Hopkinsville, you can never count Hopkinsville out. I mean, they've got a great tradition. You also have a yearbook there. Do you have, I guess, your...
No, it was some pictures from the yearbook from '73 that had.
We'll be sure to add these in to people can see.
This is wrestling. This is also Bruce Thomas, the one that.
Oh yeah.
Bruce Thomas was never won a state championship, but Bruce Thomas went on to be a wrestling at Southeast Missouri, and he was in the on the Olympic team, and he was inducted into the High School Wrestling Hall of Fame in Oklahoma.
Wow, these are some great photos. Let's go over, we'll wrap this up here. We'll go over the team for Hopkinsville. It's got Ricky Merriweather, Tony Harris, Tony at 98 pounds, my goodness. Lee Mazer, Harry Alexander, Skip Cunningham, Clee Dale. Clee Dade, I'm sorry, that's my fault. Winky Dawson, Harold Alexander.
Winky was also a state champion.
Oh, was he? Oh, yep, there it is. I see it. Harold Alexander, Kent Perrin, you're right there. Robbie Mitchell, Kerry Farrow, Howard Boykin. I mean, good-looking bunch of guys. And, of course, you guys will see photos of all these. Got regional wrestlers and got the mat maids. Got a whole lot of mat maids. My goodness. You had a whole squad full of mat maids back then.
And my wife was a mat maid back then.
Oh, was she really?
And we're still together. So
which one is? So I know which one.
Been 50 years.
My goodness. I'll be sure to point that out. I think Damien said he married his mat maid as well. She was a couple years ahead of him.
But Damien wrestled for me.
Yeah.
So, at County High.
Yep.
So, me being at County High and wrestled at Hopkinsville High and coached at Fort Campbell and County both.
Well, this is a great piece of history, both of these books. Definitely thank you for bringing these out today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know a lot of people from, you know, across the state are going to enjoy it just because of, you know, your tenure. And what I love about this is, like, when I read your bracket off, you know, we've seen the names on the end of the brackets for years. We may walk into a gym and see name on a banner, or maybe a photo in a trophy case of you guys in like a stance or whatever. But as far as getting your story, what led you to wrestling, what you've done past wrestling, what happened in your season, what makes it so important while you're coming on a Saturday here to do these interviews is why I guess we love wrestling, and why the channel is so popular and you guys love seeing these videos is the stories that, you know, these men are able to tell us. So anything to wrap it up?
I appreciate what you do.
Well,
I know
thank you.
this sport has done a lot for me.
Right.
It's the difference between boys and men.
Yep.
I know they've got girl wrestling, but I know that a lot of kids nowadays, and even back in the day, wrestling was a tough sport.
Yep.
And if you're not willing to dedicate yourself to it, and it taught me a lot about myself and
Yep.
a lot about life.
Oh yeah. Well, that's all we got. Again, thank you for being here. I can't say how much I love seeing the old photos, hearing the stories, and just letting you guys tell your story. That's all we got for 1973. Now this will be my plug. If you have the videos of any state championships that I don't have, you guys are seeing a list of what I have. I have nothing from the 1970s at all. So if you have any, if you know where they are, if you know a news station, a library, your school, your coach, somebody filmed it, please reach out, because if we can find a video of the 1970 355-pound state championship, I'm going to come back and do the video with you just so you can have it. That way, you know, your kids, your grandkids, everybody that knows you can watch and say, wow, you know, Grandpa was pretty good. There's a gentleman we've done a video with from Union County. He won most outstanding, named George King in 2000. He won most outstanding, quickest pin, most pins the least amount of time, 171-pound weight class. He got inducted to the Union County Hall of Fame a couple weeks ago, named George King.
Well, now, another story with George King's daddy.
Okay.
I was wrestling George King's daddy, who also was George King.
Okay.
And Mike Givens was the official in the match, and I had him in a half Nelson, and he was biting me the whole time. And ended up, I think I forearmed him or something after I got bit like that, after the mat was slapped. But Mike Givens, I remember, was the.
We'll have to have George tell us the story about that.
That's old George now.
Yeah, that's what I'll get his son to tell me the story, or reach out to me. But George, in his video, first time he ever got to watch it was when we done the review back in February, and he's like, his son now wrestles, and he's now a freshman. He was like, all these years he told people about how good he was and his fastest pins and all that, and he was like, maybe not now, but at one time Dad could do it. I think that's the mindset that a lot of guys take is, you know, maybe I may be a little bit slower than I was, not as strong, not as sharp, but at one time I could do it. I think that's a good place to end the video. Again, thank you, man. I really appreciate it for you being here, bringing the material. You guys will see photos of this. Just follow the playlist down. We got a full list here today. We'll see you guys there.